Afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I see that we have 34 people with us on YouTube and Facebook. Hopefully some more people will sign on. We've also, for the first time, we are on Rumble and Locals, and so I don't know how many others are going to join us. Just as a heads up, if you want to, we're going to have an interview today with an expert on lay ministry in the Global Methodist Church. He can talk about a lot of the training going on, especially down in South Georgia. We're going to begin that conversation here on this live stream, but at a certain point, we're going to switch over to Locals. So if you want to go ahead and make sure you have an account at Locals where you can go and finish the conversation with us, that's where you want to go. You want to go to PlainSpoken.locals.com. And you don't have to pay money for that. A lot of my supporters do pay money there, but you can be a free follower and continue to pay attention to that. I'm just trying to move people over to that platform in the event that anything ever falls apart here where I'm at. So anyway, if you don't want to go over there, that's just fine, but I am going to cut things off about halfway through the conversation. So if lay ministry is something that you care about, you might consider going over there. So anyway, want to greet some of those of you who are with us right now. We got Doug and Evie. Hi, Eileen. We got Olga from Pennsylvania and Marianne from Northeast Tennessee. Hey, Carolyn, I just now wrote you back. I hope you got that message. All right, I'm coming through on Locals. I'm getting slightly better at this stuff over time. This is really nice. What are you doing at the state capitol, Bill? That's the place where dramatic things happen. Hey, from California. All right, David's joining us today. David is actually the one who connected me with today's guest. So, and Jennifer reminds you, don't forget to like the video, share it with people, especially if you know of anybody who's concerned about lay ministry in the Global Methodist Church. You might send it to them in a text or a Facebook message and say, hey, you might want to tune in to this today. And we got Amber from Alaska. Amber, was it today or yesterday? It was like 3 a.m. in Alaska, and you joined the live stream first thing in the morning. Yeah, a lot of people here. I've been, between 20 and 30 people have been gathering with me every morning on Locals, where I've been doing a morning briefing. And if you don't know about that, then you should head over to, here it was again, PlainSpoken.locals.com. And that's it's been really nice for me to have a community. We read scripture, we pray together, we go over some of the day's news together, and that's where I produce a lot of my content nowadays. So if that's something you think you would enjoy, it's at 6:15 every morning over there. So you might consider joining us. We got Scott with us. Hey, Scott, and hey, Sherman. Good to see you, brother. And Princey, how's the baby? How wonderful that you ask. This is my sweet baby, Josiah. He, of course, this is why I couldn't do the live stream last Friday, and I appreciate y'all forgiving me for that. But this is Josiah. Captain is his middle name, and he is my 5th child. And this boy, if you can't tell, is healthy. He actually doesn't have his eyes open a whole lot of the time. He's getting fed very well, and he's getting plenty of sleep. He and his mama had quite a time. It was, it was her 5th time going through labor, but man, this dude, he really, he was difficult. He came down, flipped. He should have been facing downward, but he faced upward. And then he should have come out crown first, but he came out with the flat of his head. And so his face, Sarah Beth was on her back, and I'm there while she's delivering, and I see this baby come out with blood on his face, and he was used to having his hands up in the womb, so it was just a very hard labor. But she beat him, she got him out, and I was thinking, he was so tough to deliver. He's just going to be a tough baby. He's a fantastic. He didn't even cry for like 2 days, and now he really doesn't cry much. He sleeps through the night. God willing, it'll maintain. Sarah Beth makes good, healthy babies, and I really like this one. He's fun. I get to hold him, but he's still at the stage where he prefers his mother. That'll change. All my children eventually prefer me for reasons that are obvious, right? I'm joking. My wife is a lovely woman, and it's really not fair that our 2-year-old in particular just wants nothing to do with her a lot of the time. But, that's just the nature of things. They go through stages. So anyway, we had more drama than that. The last week I've just been so tired, obviously, from this baby coming around, because I did all the hard work, right? But we also, I forgot to close the chicken coop door on last Friday, a week ago Friday, and I went out the following morning, and it was bad. There was a pile of feathers over here. There's a pile of feathers over here. I don't know if it was a raccoon or what got in, and my mother-in-law, she's staying with us right now. She said, "Oh yeah, I heard them freaking out last night." Well, something had gotten in and just picked off 3 of them during the night, and so they were all terrorized for the rest of the day. And I found the bodies behind the shed. It was just a massive failure on my part. Daily disciplines. There's a reason why daily discipline is so important. If you fall down on the job, it can come at great cost. So let that be a lesson. I mean, it's a lesson to me. God help me, I never want to make that mistake again. So now we're down to like 7 eggs a day, which is barely enough to maintain a family of now 7 people. Can I believe it? Anyway, if that's the worst thing going on in a man's life, then I'm a pretty charmed life, but still, just stinks to fall down on something that I'm responsible for. So anyway, I know some of you know my pain. Let's see, who else is with us today? We got DJ, and that's good because D is actually the one responsible for today's line of questioning that we're going to follow around laity. Marianne says, "My husband has an interest in lay ministry." Also, thank you for the sweet picture of Josiah. You're very welcome. I don't hate showing off my handsome son, so thanks for calling him. You called him sweet. He is sweet. We got my friend Paul here. Hey, Duncan. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I take a lot of pictures, so I'm sure to get some good ones. But also, my wife makes very, very good-looking children. That wasn't a raccoon. They don't usually move the body, and they leave a big mess. They don't move the body. Well, I did find a possum later, but whatever it was did a lot more damage than that little possum did. I trapped it and I relocated it 5 miles away, but so it wasn't a raccoon. What a skunk maybe? I thought I got a whiff of a skunk. Maybe that was it. Fox or coyote? Yeah, I'd be surprised if a coyote, but I know that there's a fox or 2 in town. So, man, I would love to trap a fox, although I don't know what I would do with it once I got it. You can't keep them as pets. Can't keep them as pets, Jeffrey. You can't do that. All right, we've got 37 people with us. Now 41. Anyway, we'll see if we get some more. I put out a thing a few hours ago saying, "Hey, what do y'all want to talk about today?" And several people left questions, things to talk about. So I'm going to go through those, and then our guest today, I'm always already forgetting his name, Anthony McFall. He's going to join us about halfway through, and I'll bring him on, and then we'll learn from him. But here, let me pull up the slides, and we'll just go down the line in the order that I got them. Y'all remember Blango Ross, right? I did an interview with him a while back, and we talked about a lot of the racial stuff. I think it was a good, worthy conversation. He said, "Your brief commentary on Richard Allen and the African Methodist Episcopal Church was great. I always love to hear that I did something satisfactorily." If you don't know what I'm talking about, what he's talking about, Kevin Watson in this book details, let's see, man, I'm not showing you the book. Doctrine, Spirit, and Discipline, Kevin Watson, he details the emergence of the AME and the AME Zion and some other Black Methodist movements within America. And so I just found it interesting, and I commented on some of it. So he said it brought to mind some of the things that you and I discussed about how Black folks feel about the UMC and maybe now the GMC. MLK Jr. tried to hold the government and nation accountable to their own constitution and wording, all men created equal. And Allen tried to hold Methodists accountable to the Bible and discipline they espoused. More conversation needs to happen at some point about the dismal percentage of non-white people in a faith tradition that on paper was admired and accepted as a great model. And of course, there's what's on paper and then there's what's on the ground. And there are a lot of people who want to act as though once you put something on paper, that makes the ground conform to it. That is not always the case. Sometimes it's the case when you have strong law and order within a body, but a lot of times, it doesn't matter what's on the books. It doesn't matter what's on the books for the United Methodist Church so far as their doctrine goes. They don't maintain it. Doesn't matter what's on the federal law books for the United States around the border if those in charge don't enforce it. So I know I'm saying things that a talking head would say. But from the very beginning of Methodism in America, if you don't know this, there was a lot of abolitionist rhetoric. And from the very beginning, they actually said, if you're a Methodist and you hold slaves, you need to either free your slaves or get out. And they didn't free their slaves, especially in the South, and they didn't get out. And they called their bluff. And the Methodists said, all right, well, you can stay, but be on track to do it eventually. And they eventually just kind of completely welched. So it was interesting. I'm about halfway through the book now, and I was just reading about what was his name? Morris Brown. Here's a picture of him. He was one of 3 leaders. I don't know why it's not focusing on this for you. There it is. There's Morris Brown. He was one of 3 leaders. There we go. Who led the AME Church. The first 3 elected bishops of the AME Church, Coker, Allen, and Brown. Richard Allen was the original founder, and then Brown and Coker were brought on. They were associated either with policies, persons, or plots to overthrow slavery. So, yeah, he talks about on page 177 how there was actually an attempted slave revolt in Charleston, South Carolina, that a man named Denmark Vesey, who was an AME pastor, was associated with. He actually used class meeting time to foster this attempted violent overthrow of the region. And just the amount of, conservative people really worried about what would happen if you freed all these slaves that were wanting to be violent and kill people. So some of that maybe minutely mirrors modern day concerns and dynamics, but it's just interesting to look back on this period of people have been the same. People have always been the same. That's why Christ can save all of us. We don't fundamentally change over time. But a lot of the stuff on the ground, economically, culturally, has changed. And it's something that as the GMC moves forward, we really need to make sure that what is on paper, what words come out of our mouths, actually reflect what's on the ground. And so there's this thing called virtue signaling that people do, where they say the right thing, but it's not resulting in the right stuff. A lot of times it's just luxury beliefs, or it actually results in something bad for others. So if you don't know the term luxury beliefs, that's a term coined by Rob Henderson, who the best example he points at is defund the police. This is something that was largely chanted by upper middle class white folks because they are in low crime areas anyway. They don't care about it. But lower income black and brown folks suffered from these depolicing strategies. And so it's something that everybody virtue signals, hey, this is good for poor people and oppressed minorities, and actually, it's just some view that doesn't really help them and actually estranges and alienates them. So the Global Methodist Church, if it's to be truly global, we need to have not just partners that are other cultures and colors around the world, but especially here in the U.S., I think it is really important that we close that divide. And I appreciate Blango and other people staying on top of that. So that's something worth praying about. If y'all remind me at the end today, we should pray about that. Another comment. Eugene Fagan says, have you read Riley Case's article on monitoring in Juicy Ecumenism? There are many interesting points in this article. And I was reading over it a little bit. You can find it, juicyecumenism.com. The article is called Monitoring and the New Morality Within United Methodism. And we don't have the time to read over the whole thing today, but Riley Case, if you don't know that name, he's had a series of really great reflections on the decline and fall of Methodism in America. He has a good, calm demeanor as he walks through that. So the article begins with him talking about the church he was raised in and the Methodism he knew and the peace that they had. Picking up in this paragraph, a lot of this changed at the time of the Methodist Evangelical United Brethren merger in 1968 to 1972. This was a time of student unrest, social unrest, and theological upheaval. Everything from the death of God and liberation theology to the Jesus people and the charismatic movement. Suddenly there were caucus groups, political lobbying, and introduced quota systems. I was involved in some of that because I was a conference coordinator of youth ministries for some time, and we sought youth representation not only at annual conference but on general boards and agencies. I became involved in Good News and then several evangelical renewal groups about this time. Still, despite some of our differences within the denomination, we had a sense of shared moral values. I mention these things only to note the contrast from those earlier days to the present. In the late 1970s, I began attending some general church agency meetings representing Good News, and then as a delegate or alternate to general and jurisdictional conferences. I remember my first general conference as a delegate. There was much talk of unity and love. However, when the vote was taken and announced on action to uphold the church's historic stand on human sexuality, particularly in regard to the practice of homosexuality, there was picketing and disruption and demonstrations. If we, just moments before, had referred to ourselves as one big happy family, what happened? We were a big happy family no longer. Placards spoke of injustice and hatred exhibited in the vote. I thought to myself, a happy family? It was more like going home for Thanksgiving and some of the family members were marching around the dinner table with placards objecting to the food Grandma was serving. Isn't that a good metaphor? The sense of unity and common witness began and is continuing to disintegrate. We can speak of inclusiveness as a big tent and loving one another, but the reality is that we have been and are deeply divided. But won't it be better for the United Methodism now that 1/4 of our churches have disaffiliated? Skipping down, he talks about going to the Church and Society webpage. That is the social advocacy wing of the United Methodist Church. It's a general board. And he says there's nothing about connection between crime, poverty, homelessness, and one of the basic causes behind these problems, mainly the breakup of the family. There's nothing about the problem of cursing, violence, and crime, nothing about alcohol and tobacco, nothing about modesty and moral purity, nothing about Sabbath observance. So it's a really good article. I have yet to finish it, and of course we should. But I appreciated Eugene pointing me in that direction, and I think Riley's is one of those voices that should be consulted as the GMC builds something new. I know there are a lot of people saying we shouldn't look back at where we came from, but I firmly disagree with that, and I think that Riley's is a good voice to consult. So let's go on to the next thing that Tim Smith wrote. He said, how about the Republican Party platform softening on abortion? Should Christians settle for the lesser of two evils or pull our leg off of Reagan's third-legged stool? Congratulations on your newborn. Thank you, Tim. And yeah, this is something that I've been upset about. A lot of you, I mean, I've already told you guys how I think I would be called an abolitionist at this point. Modern-day abolitionism says if abortion really is murder, then that needs to be reflected in everything. Murder is not legal in this country. And so we need to be consistent in what we believe and how we defend everybody who's alive, including the unborn. And I found it really disappointing that the Republican Party welched on this position that it had previously been much more firm on. And it's for the sake of winning. And it might be politically wise, I don't know, but I come from a tradition that doesn't care about what's shrewd and wise so much about what is faithful. And so I think it's sad. I think it probably did. Ideally what would happen is they go through on this and then they have a change of heart. And conservative Christians make the case effectively so that Trump and, who's the new VP running under him? I can think of his face and the book he wrote. Anyway, it'd be great if they could change their minds and decide that the worldly authority given them could be used to defend the unborn. There is another political party I started following on X that is, of course, I can't think of their name either, but they've got a candidate running that I think it's my buddy Greg on here consistently supports. But they are all about life, preserving life. They're not Republican or Democrat. They have, I always want to say the candidate's last name is Sonnenberg, but that's not it. And I'm scrolling through X right now, just hoping it comes up. Anyway, you could say that there are more parties than the Democrats or Republicans. It's just hard when a third-party candidate never does well. I would really love RFK Jr. if he was. I mean, he's okay with abortion up to the point of delivery, which is just a non-starter for me. So anyway, it's a sad thing, but it's the reality of what we're living in right now. It's going to be another 10 minutes before our guest joins in. There were some more questions, but I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to those who are on the line with us. Hey, Bill Fox, they have a skunky smell. Interesting. Man. Oh, man. Sean says, I've been catching mornings on locals. I just do the replay about 6 or 7 in California time, and I enjoy them. Well, I'm glad to know that, Sean. I'm glad you're joining us. Bill says, it's so awesome. A new person has entered this world. You're talking about my son, Josiah. Yeah. God bless everyone in the Rickman clan. Thank you. We're a very blessed people. Blango, I'm going to order the book. Thanks for your insight. Yeah, you should. You should. Blango is the one who asked the first question a little bit, and if you haven't seen my interview with him, you really should check it out. Duncan says, Anthony has a superb talent for teaching all aspects of ministry. Well, I look forward to talking to him then. Hey, my friend Tyson, Deborah, hello from Huntsville. Thanks for highlighting WCA Speakers Series this week, praying it will be a helpful resource for many other churches. Yeah, let me show y'all the segment she's talking about. I'll pull up my... Yeah, I wanted to plug a couple things, didn't I? All right, so here's my YouTube channel and what I just posted today. WCA offers guidance for trapped, unhappy United Methodists. If you haven't already, you should consider watching that, especially if you're one of those trapped, unhappy United Methodists. WCA provided some good resources that I have links to in there. Also, wanted to make sure y'all follow Jeffrey Rickman's Substack. I don't have a link to that. I do have my PlainSpoken, I think. But I'm going to be publishing something there later tonight or tomorrow. I've been walking through 12 essentials of Methodism that I think I'm right. The more and more I write and I think about it, the more right I think I am. So each of these has been getting about 1,000 views, which I'm pleased with. And I like all the feedback. I like all the engagement. So if you haven't already, go to jeffreyrickman.substack.com to sign up for that. And then I just wanted to make sure y'all know. So the guy on the left here is Andy Miller III. He's the new president of WBS, Wesley Biblical Seminary in Mississippi. He came out of the Salvation Army. He's GMC clergy now. The guy on the right is Kevin Watson, who wrote this book. And this book, Doctrine, Spirit, and Discipline, as well as the book on class meetings, and he's written one on bands. He's written several other things. Anyway, Andy interviewed him on his More to the Story podcast. I'm about halfway through, very much enjoying it. Hopefully, Kevin and I are going to be able to arrange a sit-down here, maybe one of these Fridays, and you might want to go check that out. Very astute guy that if he and I disagree about anything, I don't know it yet, although it's not a sin to disagree with me. So anyway, if you don't know Kevin Watson, this is a good introduction to him and his thought. Oh, Jeff Harrison's here. Hey, everyone, on vacation. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You're a good friend to me, brother. Thank you. J.D. Vance, that's the vice presidential candidate that I was trying to think of. Thank you. Lincoln was an abolitionist, and he got it done by being wise and patient. And... and then declaring war on half the country whenever it tried to secede. But yes, I mean, he did have a good demeanor, but I really don't. I mean, to bring up Lincoln in this context, I do not want a civil war. I know that's not what you meant, Duncan. It's just hard not to draw those connections. Hey, Philip, good to see you. Sonsky. Thank you, Gabe. I'm glad you're on the stream. And the American Solidarity Party. That's who I was talking about. And they're worth checking out. I followed them on X. I'm reading their posts. I don't find anything immediately objectionable about Sonski. It's just they're not even going to be on the ballot for at least half the states. So it's a question of practicality. But, like I said before, what's faithful and what's practical, when you weigh between these two, what's more important? And so a vote for Sonski. Actually, I was thinking about reaching out to him. I'm not familiar about his faith, if he's a man of faith, if he's a Christian believer. Some abolitionists, or at least pro-lifers, are not people of faith at all. They're just, really, if you believe in science and that, and you just have a conviction that all humans are of equal worth, that's all it really takes to get there. So anyway. D says, I think it's biblical to examine ourselves as both individuals and as a denomination, and repent for our errors in order to be faithful servants in the future. I'm connecting that with the remarks from Blango Ross. But yeah, if we can't question ourselves, then we're pretty much damned. There has to be a constant. Well, and it results in repentance and then doing things rightly where we've been wrong. So yeah, there has to be a constant effort to do that. Lincoln was a tool of the 19th century deep state. Yeah, when you see, and I don't want to have an argument in the comments here, but a lot of people I listen to talk about how the roots of America were independent, localized, Confederate in nature, and that the powers of this world don't like that and want us to come together in a federalized, centralized system. Then the chapter of Lincoln is a very big chapter in that centralization of power and wealth in the United States. And so, yeah, when you believe in that deep state stuff, which I do a lot of the time, then Lincoln is a very complicated figure, as is MLK, who we also brought up earlier. Let's see. Karen Long says, which was to be his safe place. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. He is a Catholic. Okay, I'm glad you answered that question. So Roman Catholic, I can get over that. They should still repent. But I can get over that. JFK was a Roman Catholic, and I kind of like JFK. JFK, he was against the deep state, and that's where I'm going to end that thought. I'm going to go back to some of the other questions submitted beforehand, and then we'll welcome our guest. So George Smith said, Kentucky has a new bishop. Bishop Graves replaces Bishop Farley. Now there's no way out. That is pretty much beyond dispute. Graves has been, he said one thing, he did another. Well, actually, you know what? I would like to be proven wrong here. I would like to believe that Graves really was held hostage by hostile trustees in the Alabama-West Florida Annual Conference, and now that he's in Kentucky, let's see Kentucky behave differently. And then I can eat my words about Graves being a dishonest man who says one thing and then does another. I would love to be wrong on that count. This is from Michael McConnell. If the 400 plus petitions that were percolating for years prior to ratification in May 2024, what is on the horizon to be passed in 2028? He's talking about in the United Methodist Church. I try to get clear about this. He says, not necessarily any petitions not voted on in 2024. What is the UMC delegates proposing or being discussed to change in 2024? Gay issues were percolating for about 10 years prior to being passed in 2024. At the 28 General Conference, my supposition is that once the 24 changes have been passed, there are other things to be voted on that may seem counter to what people would accept from their denomination. So he's probably right. The people in authority are always going to have an agenda that they're pushing in one direction or another because, that's the trend towards Methodism. Where we started, everything was really pretty great, and then compromises were made, and we went in a more worldly direction step by step. Reading that section in Kevin Watson's book was very discouraging. I already knew it, but he lines it all out together. The thing that's different, though, is for many years, General Conference could only get to some of the petitions, and then the others got tabled till the next session. And there was new legislation adopted at the 2016 General Conference that made that impossible. Every item submitted, every petition submitted had to be voted on. So there is nothing from the 2024 General Conference that was tabled, except for maybe one or two things that they took out of the mix and said, we're explicitly tabling this till 2028. Everything else was passed in these consent calendars. And so it's hard to predict what the institution is going to do in 4 years. It's almost certainly going to be this carte blanche walking in lockstep with the far left of the Democrat Party. And whatever the issues of that day are, we'll know in 2.5, 3 years. So there'll just be continued pushing towards adopting whatever the non-sexually conforming community and its thinkers believes. So anything to do with environmentalism, anything anti-Israel, whatever the issues are that are coded left, they're going to make resolutions about. And but I don't know. I can't imagine that they're really going to touch the doctrine. I think they just don't care what the doctrine is. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I think this is the last one. No, it's not. Stephen Bachmeyer, our friend who's a missionary to Japan, he said, I remember hearing that there was some stuff happening regarding a part of the ACNA, Anglican Church, building bridges with the GMC. I'm curious about what happened with that. And I'm also curious if the petition by the Philippine Conference's petition for mission agency has gained traction in other conferences. So that's two different things. The ACNA thing I covered and it was overstated. This was part of the reason I did it. This was a post by Sid Johnson. He took that screenshot is from a report, official report within an ACNA body. It's like an Ecumenical Relations Task Force is what it's called. So I just texted Keith Boyett directly and said, who's responsible for such conversations? Is there anything moving forward? He said, I would definitely know if anybody was doing this. Nobody is. Scott Jones, yes, he's friends with some of them. He's attended some of their stuff. We're not welcoming them to come to our convening conference. We're not starting anything official with them. So apparently there's been some confusion here. But it's understandable. I mean, the GMC is just getting slapped together as quickly as possible. Ecumenism is down the road. So I didn't hear Boyett. I did also text Bishop Jones. He hasn't gotten back to me. But I think any hopes that the ACNA and the GMC form any kind of formal relationship, that's probably at least 2-3 years down the line, just depending on our priorities. What was the other thing? Oh, the Philippine Conference's petition for a missions agency. That's still strange to me. I don't know what's going on. There have been several task forces with the imprimatur of the GMC meeting behind closed doors that this missions one, they didn't want to talk to me. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what petitions are being presented. We're going to find out next week. All the petitions are going to be published, and then we'll see what they presented to the General Conference. So I don't know that there's anything more to say on that until then. So the line of questioning here, I'll come back to this. This is D. Jenkins. Sorry if y'all didn't see the last question. I realize I didn't switch over. This introduces the topic. D says, I would like to hear what, and once I cover this, I'll bring our guest on. Actually, I'm going to go ahead. I'll let y'all read this, and then I'm going to go ahead and get our guest squared away. Okay, I think I did this right. So I've got Dee's post right here. She says, I'd like to hear about what clergy think about the lay minister training program. I'm in it and not really so sure that this training qualifies us to preach or to pastor churches like some folks are thinking. This training is okay for me because I did not enroll in it for this purpose. I enrolled in it to better support clergy, i.e. relieve administrative burden, and to better understand how to serve on church council or as lay delegate and perform church administrative tasks. I think this lay minister training is suitable for this purpose, but not enough for a local pastor assignment. So Amber Day Summers says, I'd be interested in this as well. And then David Donan told about his area, and he's the one who connected me with our guest today. But Dee said, this sounds kind of like a repeat of what the UMC did with local licensed pastors to me, and we see how that turned out. I think she's responding to his last bit. I think we have a large number of certified lay ministers serving in the GMC, and I think that's a great thing. So then Dee said, I feel like this training is excellent as a primer to discernment regarding seminary enrollment and or a key clergy support person in the local church. But in my opinion, it doesn't qualify a person for a pastor in charge assignment in an Episcopal polity system. So with that in mind, I knew I needed a guest that could actually speak to these things and to the particulars of what the GMC is doing to equip lay leadership to work alongside clergy. It's not something that I'm real strong in. I don't have a lot of familiarity with. And so this right here is our guest for the day, Anthony McFall. Anthony, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
I can. I want to confirm with people who are on the live stream, can you hear Anthony all right? I don't want to move forward with him until I know that y'all can hear him. So if y'all could confirm that you just heard him talk, that would make me very happy. And then we'll get to know Anthony a little bit. All I know about him is that he is a senior pastor at Valdosta First Methodist Church. If I said that wrong, don't correct me. And he's an elder in the South Georgia Provisional Conference, which is a very strong area in the Global Methodist Church. So here, while we're waiting on somebody, oh, there's an echo. Okay, hold on one second. I think I know what to do about that as soon as I find my audio again. I'm glad someone told me. All right, I'm gonna mute that. Anthony, say something. Say howdy ho. All right, I didn't hear you. Okay, so let's. How do I keep there from being an echo? This will be. Oh, I know what to do, maybe. Appreciate you being understanding, Anthony. Okay, I'm going to change one setting, and then I'll be right back. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you're about?
Hey, everybody. My name is Anthony McFall. I'm a pastor in the South Georgia Provisional Annual Conference, and I'm the pastor of Valdosta First Methodist Church. And that is, if you're not familiar with the geography of Georgia, we are at the very southern part of the state, just a stone's throw from the Florida line. And it's a great place to be, home of Titletown, USA, winningest high school football team in the country, Valdosta High. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this. Jeffrey, you do a great job of kind of talking the broad spectrum of Methodism and things that have been going on the past few years. And I've been following your podcast for about a year, and just always have appreciated your content and your desire to spread the conversation. So thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to do it. It's been fun for me because I get to talk to important people, and I'm not an important person. I just get to lift up other important people. So, and I love that you got a chance to brag on your people. And how long have you been there, did you say?
I've been at Valdosta for 4 years. I moved right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, which was a wonderful time to be a new pastor in a new community.
Okay. So, and you've been in ministry how long?
I've been in ministry for over 20 years. I started when I was in college. I've been under appointment, I guess you would say, for the past 13.
Okay. And you did seminary where?
I went to Emory, and then I did a doctorate at Asbury.
Cool. Doctorate. Okay, so you're the Reverend Doctor Anthony McFall. It is McPhail, right?
It is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so help me understand, what's your background now in lay ministry in the Methodist world, and specifically in the Global Methodist setup?
Okay, so I'll give a little bit of background. So going back to my UMC days, I would be kind of in the rotation for teaching the lay speaker classes, that became lay servant classes, and also taught the certified lay ministry program as a part of the United Methodist Church. I also taught licensing school and course of study. So I worked a lot with local pastors and also people who were laity that were discerning where God might use them in ministry. And so when I got ready to make the shift to the Global Methodist Church, that was one of the things that I was hoping I would still have an opportunity to be a part of. And fortunately, our conference, and particularly our president pro tem, Jay Hansen, that we were eager to hit the ground running and go ahead and roll out a program as soon as possible. And so last fall, we launched a program for certified lay ministry, basically taking nothing but the paragraph that's in the transitional book of doctrines and disciplines and developing a program around the key tenets that are laid out there. And so we started that program. We made some tweaks to it, ran it again in the spring based on some guidelines that have been approved by the Transitional Leadership Council. And now we're ready to run it again for the next year. And so we've got a new cohort launching in August. We'll do a kind of a la carte version where you can take courses at your pace throughout the year. And then also we are going to be doing an immersion weekend that will be in January here in Valdosta, where if someone wanted to knock out all of the training, all of the coursework at one time, they could come to Valdosta, be here for a long weekend, Thursday through Sunday, and knock everything out.
So in designing this course, you'd already had similar courses you taught in the UMC. What is there a significant difference between what you taught in the UMC and what you're teaching now in the GMC?
I wouldn't say that it's a significant difference. There's a lot of, when we go over Global Methodist polity and Global Methodist history, that's obviously been updated from what we went over in the United Methodist Church. But for the most part, it's still a lot of the same tenets. We're basically just kind of reinvigorating it and making it more of a priority. I know when I taught lay ministry courses in the UMC, it would not be unusual for there to be a class canceled because there weren't enough people signed up for it. In the Global Methodist Church, we've had more than enough every time we've launched a course to have a full offering. There's been a lot of excitement, a lot of interest in it. And so that's really been the big difference, just the enthusiasm for it.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second. There was somebody knocking on the door. Plenty of action around here. But I heard most of your answer. Okay, so how much direction have you gotten from the GMC about designing this course, or did you just get to do whatever you wanted?
So the first round last fall, I basically got to do whatever I wanted. We took what was in the paragraph 402 in the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Disciplines. We said these are the areas that need to be highlighted, and we developed curriculum around it. And that was largely me pulling from my experience with course of study, lay speaker training, certified lay ministry training in the UMC, and kind of pulling that together. Last fall, I believe it was around September or October, the Transitional Leadership Council had put together a task force that developed some guidelines for what CLM training could look like. And
what was that task force? Say the name of the task force again.
I don't know what the name of the task force was, but
Okay.
they were charged with basically drafting a program. And I think draft is probably the right word because it was definitely left open-ended with some flexibility for conferences to develop around what they had put together. So we took those guidelines. The Transitional Leadership Council did approve those. but also said very much, you know, we want each conference to be able to develop their own. And so we used that and basically launched our next round of training in January around those guidelines. And I wouldn't say that it's not curriculum. It's not a workbook. They haven't produced that yet. That may come down the line. But it was essentially, these are the topics we want to make sure that you cover. And so we just developed the training around those topics.
So if I understood you correctly, in the formation of this program in South Georgia where you are, it's mostly you and one other guy who just have a passion for this. Is he clergy or laity?
Well, so I mentioned Jay Hansen, who's our president pro tem. He was the one
Okay.
who really gave the permission to take it and run with it. I've brought in, I'd have to go back and count, probably 5 or 6 different people that have helped to co-facilitate some of the courses. And so it hasn't just been me and one other person. So far, it has only been clergy that have been a part of the training. One of my goals for the future of the program is to do it with clergy and lay partnerships, where you would have a clergy person and a lay person working together to teach a course. But we haven't gotten to that point yet.
So before the split to the GMC, was the laity in South Georgia, were they strong, or is this like building a new thing now from a relatively weak laity?
No, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that I wouldn't say that they were strong or weak prior to this. I would say maybe dormant might be the right word. They were kind of not exactly awakened, but you know, we've had people who, and this goes back to the question that was posted on Facebook in response to your prompt. We have people who saw the need for churches that were going to be open and without a pastor, and they signed up for it, said, I'm not called to be clergy, I'm not called to serve a church long term, but I recognize that the harvest is plentiful, and these churches are ready and eager to continue in worship and continue in ministry, but right now they don't have leadership, and maybe I could fill that void for a little bit and then go back and be a part of my church. And so we've seen a lot of people that the need as churches disaffiliated and there were pastoral openings that were not anticipated, people jumping in and rising to that challenge. But then beyond that, I think there's also just been a renewed sense of people are paying more attention to what's going on in the local church. They're excited about what's new. They're excited about what God's doing in our congregations, and this is a way for them to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I had to tell my understanding of what's happened with lay leadership in the Methodist movement, it started off that laity were very strong because they had to be strong. It was a revival movement that hardly had any clergy support. And so laity had to step up. They were class leaders and were doing a lot of that pastoral work in the local church, actually more than, what you had was Methodist preachers that were circuit riders going around, and then you had essentially lay pastors that were running things on the ground. And then you had the professionalization of the clergy, which began this long trend towards the clergy taking on more and more of the leadership roles of the church. And the laity, even though on paper they're given a lot of authority and responsibility, the clergy are the full-time people that are on site all the time. And you see this bureaucratic taking of authority that you see in every other sphere. And so I would describe, at least by, in contrast to early Methodism, modern day lay ministry is quite weak. And that's because they've been trained to be weak. That's because they've been trained to let the full-time professionals take charge and take over. But even in this dynamic, you've still seen lay votes in the United Methodist Church be much more faithful than the professionalized clergy whenever it comes to biblical holiness. And so within the GMC now, I think you have a bunch of laity that have been trained to be weak, and they've realized, no, we need to be strong. And they're trying to figure out how to be strong. And some of the clergy like you were saying, okay, yeah, here's how you can engage the system and participate in it more. But also I'm sensing that the laity kind of need to draft their own way forward. And I've had a hard time discerning okay, how overbearing are the clergy and denominational structures being in telling them how they've got to get trained? And then how much are the laity really able to step up and take their rightful place? And I'm already wanting to argue with like 6 things that I said just there. So why don't you respond to whatever you want to in there? And keep in mind that a lot of people listening right now are laity. I think more laity than clergy are actually on my page. So what do you think is helpful for them to understand about this present moment in which we're standing?
I tracked with a lot of what you were saying. I think your historical analysis is very accurate in terms of we started out with very strong laity. I feel that a lot of what's happened is, especially in churches where the clergy, as you mentioned, were not aligned in terms of orthodoxy with the congregation, that in a lot of those cases, the laity really did have to step up and exert some leadership that maybe they had been trained not to exert in previous generations. And so that kind of has fueled it a little bit to set the wheels in motion for people being a little more eager to serve and to jump in and be leaders. I believe that there needs to be not just what I'm doing in developing programming to train laity. There needs to be a certain degree of lay-led initiatives. And as a clergy person, I wouldn't begin to speak into that. I believe that's something that they need to discern on their own and see where God is leading them, that they can take on. And one of the things we're doing is in our conference, we're going to do some events this fall that we want to be essentially lay-led. And we've talked about how maybe the presiding elder will get up and make announcements or say a benediction at the end, but we want it from beginning to end to be lay-led. And we want to invite people from our churches in our respective areas to those events so that they see that it's not all about being a clergy-led denomination, that it's about being a lay-led denomination as well.
Yeah, it's like with youth in the church, and you're trying to teach them to take the reins, and you have a youth-led only service, and then it's just, for a micromanager like me, it really is hard, and I know I'm not the only clergy who struggles with micromanaging, but it is incumbent upon us to do it. I mean, we know it's a big part of our history. And the other thing, I've been talking about reading Kevin Watson's book. Have you gotten this yet?
I haven't yet, but it's on my list.
Well, he details some of the history whenever. It's interesting because Methodism was super strong in the laity in the beginning, but laity weren't given voice or vote at the conferences. It was only clergy. And even when it was all the clergy assembled, John Wesley was very clear. He didn't want it to come down to votes. This is not the Methodist Republican Church. It's the Methodist Episcopal Church. And it's only through a series of steps that laity gained voice within the Methodist movement. But even so, as they did it, it seemed like the role of clergy and episcopal. It's a very weird dynamic. I don't have any digested thoughts to offer on that. It just feels to me like we need to be looking at our history as we try and chart the course forward. Let's turn to Dee's question, because her critique, Dee Jenkins, she said she's going through the course and it's great for some kind of basics. And I don't think she's in South Georgia with you. She said it's not really great for equipping the laity to take the helm at one of these churches that doesn't have clergy. And that's a big need in the GMC right now. There are tons of churches, especially rural churches or church plants in urban areas, that cannot find clergy to lead them. There might be a laity that are willing to step up, but they're not really being trained to do that. It sounds to me like that's what Dee is saying. How much of that do you think is just her area, and then how much do you think is really that's the situation in the GMC right now?
I think that she raised a great question, first of all. I think that she is taking her experience in the program and looking at it and saying, I don't know that I'm ready by the end of this training to be leading a church. And I think that a lot of people who go through certified lay ministry training would say that they don't feel ready. I will say, from a training perspective, my role within this, I do not design it from the standpoint of thinking at the end of the training, everyone will be ready to go and lead a church. I'm very much the way I kind of pedagogically, the way I tend to think is I want you to get what you need to get out of the training and to serve how God is leading you to serve. And so with that, I'm leaving a little bit of open-endedness to it in that I want you to find your calling and your giftings and sharpen those within the program more so than me dictating exactly what you need to be doing. I think that people who come through our program in South Georgia will be ready to step in and substitute for a pastor. I think they will be ready to lead a church on a Sunday morning if called upon. I don't know that every single one of them would be ready to lead a church as an interim pastor or a long-term license, what we used to call licensed local pastor. Mm-hmm. But I also don't feel that it should be CLM training and then you're on your own. That is where I believe that the role of the presiding elder comes in. That's where mentors come in. That's where the candidacy process can come in if it's somebody who is discerning a call to clergy ordination path, vocational leadership. And so in those cases, to Dee's question, I don't think it's supposed to be the end of your training. I think it's supposed to give you the basic skills that would equip you to go and fill in at a church